Welcome, everybody, to episode 9 of Top Soccer Coach. Today, we have a very special guest, a guy whose accomplishments are, I can't read them all because he has so many accomplishments, but we're talking 29 years plus in the game. We're talking college coach at Curry College at LaSalle. He was the United Soccer Coaches goalkeeping. Gio, what were you for? Are you the head of goalkeeping at United Soccer?
So I'm a national staff coach, national goalkeeper staff coach for United Soccer Coaches, as well as a national staff coach for United Soccer Coaches.
Okay, and ODP, you work for ODP?
ODP, I'm an East Region staff coach for what was then Region 1, now it's the East Region. I oversee ODP training for New Hampshire North. As you know, I was a head college coach for, 20-odd years. The last 7 or 8 years as a goalkeeper coach. Heavily involved in coaching education, as you know. So
24 years in the classroom as a phys ed teacher. Is that correct?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I'm very, very proud of that. Yes.
Yes, and you own GP Soccer Consulting, and you also own a voiceover company. Is that correct?
Yeah, my original career intent, Marcus, as you know, was radio and TV broadcasting. I had no intention of getting into this whole soccer thing. I was fascinated with particularly radio. And when I was a kid, I get the little transistor radio. I'm dating myself. I used to love to spin the dial and listen to different radio stations from like New York or from, someplace outside of Boston. I was fascinated by that. And I was going to get into radio and TV broadcasting, and then everything changed when I discovered I could teach physical education, coach soccer, wear this type of stuff every day, all day. It was pretty cool. And then later in life, about, 7 or 8, 9 years ago, I got into voiceover work. And I've been very successful at that at GP voiceover services. And then from there, because I have a studio and, I know all the technology, all that type of stuff, I started GP Soccer Podcast, which you have been a guest 4 times.
Amazing.
Yeah, and that has just boomed. I mean, that stuff has boomed. The podcasting stuff keeps me very, very busy. As does the voiceover stuff. I do a lot of voiceover, a lot of corporate stuff. So
listen, Gio, there's so much I want to talk to you about. And I know Massachusetts well. My parents, had a house out in Massachusetts and diehard Red Sox fans and all this. How did you, because hockey and baseball are huge in Massachusetts. Tell me about how you first got involved in the game as a kid. What turned you on to it? Like, was there pro soccer you followed in Massachusetts? Like, give us a little insight.
Well, I grew up in an Italian family. My father, being born in Italy, and met my mom, who was Italian here in the United States. Soccer is in our DNA. But growing up, I was a sports kid. As you mentioned, in Boston, when I was growing up, sports was huge. The Bruins were huge, in the 70s. The Celtics, the Red Sox weren't so great, but Boston was a big sports town. So I followed all the Boston sports. But at my core, Marcus, I was a soccer guy because of mostly my father's influence. And when kids were running off to the field to play pickup baseball, or I was trying to recruit kids to go play soccer, and they're like, what is soccer? And so I was able to recruit, kids here and there to play in the park. And I was very fortunate, Marcus, that at that point in my life, and we're going back a number of years, where youth soccer didn't exist, club soccer didn't exist.
Really?
But I was it didn't exist. So I played for my church, the church league. I was at Immaculate Conception Church. We played against one parish against the other. And I was really lucky to have an Italian guy, Gianfranco Scimone. I remember his name really well. And he knew the game. He was passionate about the game. And so I was very lucky to play youth soccer in an era where youth soccer really didn't exist.
Yeah.
And then from there, I went on to be on the very first high school program in my hometown of Weymouth, at Weymouth South High School. And
the first one?
Yeah, the very first high school team at Weymouth South High School in 73. Wow. I graduated in 1973. And I played 3 years of varsity soccer, and we got our behinds kicked.
Were you always a keeper, Gio?
No, I was a midfielder.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. And there's during those years, Marcus, there was 2 of us who knew how to play soccer. Myself, and a kid from Scotland, Al McLaughlin. We were the only 2 that were soccer players. The rest of them were kids who just tried soccer because it looked kind of cool.
Yeah.
A great coach, great coach, Wayne Masters, great coach, years ahead of his time. Created a wonderful soccer experience. We trained really well. He would be a master coach now. He was so ahead of his time.
Yeah.
Then I played in college until I broke my leg going into my senior as a goalkeeper. I converted as a goalkeeper during college.
Okay.
And going into my senior, I broke my leg, couldn't play my senior year. Played a little bit professionally. If you blink, you miss it. The old major indoor soccer league.
Oh, you did play? You played in the MISL?
Like I said, if you blink, you miss it. I had tryouts for the New York Arrows, the Wichita Wings. I was out in Wichita for a very brief period of time. Didn't make it. And then came back and played semi-professionally here in the Boston area. Made a few bucks doing that. And then, I had to grow up. Yeah. Got a real job as a health and physical education teacher. The high school soccer job was offered to me. And I went, sure. And the rest is history, as they say,
that is amazing. Listen, how do you think, and we might have touched on this before, but when I look back at like some of the top coaches from Jose Mourinho to Sacchi in Italy, these are guys that weren't top level players, but they were all phys ed teachers. And for me, I started out as a phys ed teacher myself. And I had started my coaching career rather young. I mean, I started helping coach when I was 18 years old. And I found that when I got into my phys ed classes, I already had a really good organizational capability and setting up exercises that had flow and work. What's your feeling about, like, how did it affect you? Like, did you notice that you're a better coach because of both, do you think?
Listen, you hit a great topic. This is my own personal opinion. As you know, I've been involved in coaching education for a lot of years, and I have found, albeit very unscientifically, that the best candidates that I have seen in coaching education courses typically are teachers. For the very things you just noted, in particular physical education teachers, because we come with training, in kinesiology and biomechanics, and that type of stuff, working with kids with varying athletic abilities, if you will. So the groundwork and the foundation, I think, is really well laid out if you are a teacher, number one, but a physical education teacher in particular, given the training that we undergo, during our college years. So for me, it was I'm very thankful for the 24 years that I spent in health and physical education, because most of it has application in what I do, not only as a coach, but as a coach educator. And I say this all the time, Marcus, the field is a classroom, the players are students, the coach is the teacher, and all the things that make for a great academic environment, any great classroom environment, are the very same things that are applicable to the soccer field. Yeah. And I preach that, and I firmly believe that. And if we all think back at who our favorite teachers were, right? These were the people who loved their subject matter. They were enthusiastic. They created wonderful teaching and learning environments in their classrooms. You couldn't wait to get to the class. You were disappointed when the bell rang when you were leaving. Those are the very same things that our best coaches should have and do have if they're really good at what they do.
Yeah, listen, a couple of things that come out to me, Gio, when I watch you coach and when I watch you speak and give presentations, is that similar to when I studied a little bit about John Wooden, your message is very clear. It's very concise. It's straight to the point. Do you often think before you speak when you're going to give, feedback or because it seems to be right on and it commands respect? Do you think about what you're saying before you start talking?
It's like anything else, Marcus. If you do something long enough, number one. Number two, you remain enlightened and open-minded, and you're always learning. The answers come pretty simple when you're making an assessment, you're asking a question. I think those two things are really important. The experience you have, and then I guess more importantly, staying open-minded and learning different things. I mean, I just completed a coaching course not too long ago. You're very aware of Tovo and Todd Bean. And I'm 63 years old and I'm still learning. I still want to learn. I'm still absorbing stuff. And now at this point in my life, given my experience, I now have even more information that I have learned taking this latest course. That again, when somebody asks me a question, I have to do an assessment or I have to give a talk about something. It's all kind of there. And it kind of flows. It flows nicely.
It's actually very interesting because one of the questions I had written down to ask you is how important is continuing your professional development as an older coach?
Yep.
And from that, and here's the thing for me is without being like not being open-minded as an older coach, it is not always the case, right? Because people sometimes think they know it all. Um, but do you find like when I go to the convention now, I find that maybe not as much will resonate with me because maybe I've seen it before, but then I see something, I'm like, oh my God, I never thought of that before. And it starts a new avenue, a new open door, like I'm a new coach again. Does that happen to you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what's really important, Marcus, and you and I kind of built the same way. Um, you always have to be reflective. You
Mhm.
always have to look at your life and then your professional life. And you look back a day, a week, a month, a year, 10 years, 30 years,
Mhm.
and learn from that. And through reflection, you can then move forward as to what the next thing might be in terms of what you learn. And yeah, I'm like you. I mean, when I go to the convention, for example, this year I'm presenting. So, I'm a presenter, but when I'm not presenting, I'm like every other coach. I got my notebook and I've got my sessions checked off and I'm going to go see this person talk. I'm going to see that presentation. And I'm learning.
Yeah.
Sometimes you learn this much. Sometimes you learn a whole heck of a lot more, but I'm learning something. And as you just so nicely put, all of a sudden, boom, there's all this new cool stuff that you want to start thinking about and processing and learning more about. And that's wonderful. It's
Yes.
wonderful. Marcus, it's what keeps you young. At
Yeah.
the risk of sounding very cliche,
Yeah.
it keeps your professional mind young. And what happens, a byproduct of that, Marcus, is you're not an older coach. You're not an older coach because you're still growing and learning and processing stuff, just like the 20 odd coach.
Yeah, I think it's a dangerous. I spoke with this with Dean Koski from Lehigh, and it's a dangerous assertion to say, listen, just because this coach has 30 years experience, doesn't mean he's a dinosaur. It doesn't
Right.
mean he doesn't have new ideas, and it doesn't mean he's not on the cutting edge. I think that's an assumption that in the soccer world, people tend to think that, and it's really, really unfortunate. I think that we always have to appreciate the wisdom of older coaches and the knowledge base, and I think in this profession, it's something that we really do have to look at a little more carefully.
Oh, I
Um,
agree. I agree wholeheartedly. It's wonderful. It really is wonderful getting older, right? Because getting older means you've got experience and wisdom.
yeah,
But along the way, that's just one part. The second part of it is remaining, open minded to learning new stuff. And when you combine wisdom and experience with newfound knowledge, it's awesome. It's
it's
awesome.
awesome. Yeah, of course, you could be an older coach who's not open-minded, and you could be a dinosaur and never progress since you're 25 years old. I mean, that's obviously, and I don't think it has anything to do with age. So, so for me, like when you came up to Monroe and I brought you up to help my goalkeeper coach, who was a newer coach, and I sat in on one of the classroom sessions that you were giving him, and I thought it was so good how you had a methodology that you start with the keeper, then you add players, then you add them into a team, and I know that you were influenced by Tony DeChico. Have you continued to add things like in your own way to that methodology and kind of develop things?
I've kind of, that's a great question. I've kind of remained steadfast to the DeChico method. God rest his soul. He was such a great influence on me as a goalkeeper coach. Um, because I think at the end of the day, I know at the end of the day, to effectively train goalkeepers and develop goalkeepers, you need players. Because the reality is, on game day, guess what? There are players out there,
Yeah.
right? And I think the DeChico method, starting with the coach goalkeeper, and then the next phase adding players, and then the last phase making it a team environment or a game, a real kind of game, is perfect toward the training and development of goalkeepers. That is not to say that there are occasions when you get an hour and it's just you and the goalkeepers. I'm
Mm.
not dismissing that. There are times when you do that, and there are a lot of variables that go into why you would just do you and the goalkeepers. But generally speaking, I really believe that you need players. I'll give you a simple example. Let's say you're working on crosses,
Hmm.
right? Guess what? You need players to
Yeah.
knock crosses. And then you need, attacking players to get on the end of a cross. And then you need defending players to try to, disrupt the cross. And then you need, well, if the goalkeeper wins the ball, the defenders win the ball, you need something to counter to, right?
Mm.
And then you create games. You can't do any of that unless you have players.
Yeah.
Unless you have players. And a really, really good goalkeeper coach is one who can train the goalkeeper, and I'll use crossing as just a simple example, who can train the goalkeeper in that particular topic, but also train the players, because you can train very economically. I can train from an attacking standpoint to finishing. I can train, defending. We win the ball. We're going to counter, why? We're going to counter here. That's a really good, effective training environment, because at the end of the day, the goalkeeper coach is a soccer coach first.
Yeah.
Happens to train the goalkeepers. So you better know your soccer stuff.
Yeah. Interesting. Listen, I've just, you know me, I'm always reading in these things, and I was reading about technique, and so I just came out with a new article on my blog about basically how we learn skills. And what it's talking about is that when we learn technique, because everybody's body is different, that there is no fundamentals, that basically what works for somebody might not work for somebody else. And to make people into these are the 4 phases of this technique, and you have to adhere to these, it becomes a slippery slope. And the reality is, no ball that's kicked to you or bounces to you is ever going to bounce or be kicked the same way. So we actually never perform the same technique twice. But there are some stabilizations of movements that keep us consistent so we can have successful outcomes. However, what happens is, and one of the persons I was listening to with this was saying, like, somebody like Tim Tebow in football, he basically didn't release the ball quick enough. So in college he was okay, but in the pros he wasn't. And the reason being is they couldn't teach him how to do it, because he would always revert back to that stability of movement that he learned for so many years, and he wasn't able to learn a new one. So, but what they found is, with constraints, that if you take somebody completely out of their comfort zone and take away options, that now they're forced to explore these new movements. And through exploring new movements, it can give them a unique skill set. And where I'm going with this, Gio, is, like, we can say about Peter Cech with the ping pong balls and all these things that he did with his goalkeeper coach. He eventually explored new movements to save ping pong balls that translated into the 11v11 game, where he said, I found these new movements which I never would have found before. What's your thought on like the technical training? Because there's so many techniques in goalkeeping, of trying to let players explore movements, and, like, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, from a player standpoint, I'm spot on. I agree with you in terms of changing the environment. If you want Johnny or Janie or a group of kids to try something different, whether it be something technical or even something tactical, thinking something different, change the environment. In the case of Tim Tebow, he had a very unorthodox release. He was a bit more of a sidearm. So when you can kind of change the environments, now he's forced to explore different methods by which he released the football. The same thing is applicable in soccer, particularly at the grassroots developmental level. Change the environment. And then kids are forced to think differently and try different things. Like I said, whether it's technical or even tactical, which means you play a lot more, and you have to get away from drills, right? And I use that word for a reason, drills. We need to we get more into activities, games, creating game-like scenarios that have all the appropriate restrictions or alterations or modifications to force the players to think differently. I'm big on, particularly with grassroots, with unstructured play, letting them kind of play. And teaching coaches how you can create environments that are a tiny bit structured, but at the end of the day, the kids have to think freely. I'll give you an easy example. Group of 10-year-olds playing 4 versus 4, right? I take the goals, I take them off the end line, and I turn them around. Then so I've structured it, guilty as charged, a little bit, but what I don't structure is the kids thinking on how to solve the problem. Because the kids always, and I've done this, they go, hey, coach, the goals, they're turned around. And I use the 3 magic words, figure it out.
Figure it out, yeah.
Figure it out. And they do. And if you sit back and you watch them, their technique has to change, because now they reach a certain point where they can't go direct to goal. They have to go out around to the other side, which requires a different skill set for dribbling, for passing. They have to think differently tactically. Well, Johnny is going to this side of the goal. I have to go to the other side of the goal. And the game becomes the teacher. I just facilitated the environment. I didn't put any restrictions on it besides putting the goals off the end line and go play. Now, from a goalkeeping standpoint, sure, you can do the same type of thing. You can kind of change environments, to change technique. But heck, at the end of the day, the number one rule in goalkeeping is make the save.
Yeah.
Interestingly, yesterday on Facebook, I'm on all the, like you, all the goalkeeping stuff and soccer stuff. Someone had posted something about pulling down a cross, and they left off their wrong foot. But yet the kid pulled down the cross and pulled it down effectively and brilliantly, I might add. So the argument, or the answer was, did Johnny or Janie get up there and save the ball? Yes, they did.
Yeah, they did.
And if they can do it consistently, yippee, good for them. Good for them.
Yeah. So. Gio, when I think like a massive constraint, and you'll probably think of more, but like for goalkeepers was in the early 90s when you couldn't pick the ball up from a back pass anymore.
Well, listen, I lived through that time.
I mean, how much did that one condition, that one rule change everything about development of a keeper?
Well, they went from just being like the person who played goal to becoming a soccer player.
Yeah.
Because now you had to be a soccer. You had to have good soccer skills because you couldn't pick it up.
Yeah.
So you had better be able to have a good first touch. You better be able to dribble. You better be able to, pass the ball, take the ball back. Changing points of attack. You went from being the kid who was just the goalkeeper to a soccer player.
Yeah.
Who happens to be the goalkeeper. It was monumental.
Yeah.
Monumental.
It's funny. So when I talked to Mickey Cohen a couple episodes ago, who 1966 LIU national championship final goalkeeper, he would go through the changes of, he never wore gloves. There was no gloves back then. And then the changes in the technology of the ball because it swerves more. And his biggest thing is that, goalkeepers aren't good enough at catching the ball anymore. He's like, it's a lost art to catch the ball. And
it's become more of a challenge.
Yeah, it's just interesting to me that, these are all constraints. These are all changes in environments, whether it's in, whether it's equipment, whether it's rule changes. These things are very interesting. One thing I thought that was very interesting that you told me about goalkeeping, I just wanted to share with everybody, was how you have the goalkeeper stand behind the net sometimes in training. Can you explain to us kind of that?
Sure. I use that a lot for younger goalkeepers who are very hesitant to want to talk. As we know, it's cliche. The goalkeeper is the quarterback because they see everything in front of them. And goalkeepers, effective goalkeepers, are ones who can really communicate well. They read the game, what's happening in front of them, whether their team is defending or an attack, and then they can verbally, help move things along. And so one of the things I do for training, again, particularly for up-and-coming goalkeepers, I put them behind the goal. And the way you make saves is by communicating with your team where to go, from the individual players to a couple of players to a group of players who are in front of you, or it could be a block, whatever. But you have to talk, your way through defending the goal. I put them behind. I put them on, and I've done it at the collegiate level where I've had some pretty good goalkeepers at the collegiate level, but they don't talk.
Yeah.
All right, let's go back to the age old activity of get behind the goal, and you're going to have to defend the goal by communicating.
I love it.
It's simple, but it's so effective.
Yeah, effective. I've never heard of it before, and that really caught me. Gio, one of the things that you told me I thought was just amazing. I tell people this story all the time, and this leads me to, you're a college coach for so many years, and I wanted to ask you about, you had a lot of teams that won and a lot of teams probably that had a losing season like we all do. do you do things differently with a team that's having a losing season to a team that's having a winning season, even from like a mentality perspective outside the X's and O's? But I'll never forget the story about the soccer ball and the panels when you scored a goal. I think that's the greatest story. So can you give us a little insight about winning teams, losing teams, maybe what coaches should remember, and your panel story? I love that.
Well, I'll start with the panel story first. It was one of the years I was at LaSalle College, just outside of Boston, and we were having some trouble scoring goals. Yeah. We were having some trouble scoring goals, and again, I'm kind of an outside the box thinker. I'm big on sports psychology. I'm big on team building. I'm big on what can I do to take this issue and make it an issue, because you got to score goals, but make it fun.
Yeah.
And I don't know where it came from, Marcus. I don't know, but I had this old ratty ball from the old school days. I had a lot of the panels on it. And it was like, all right, boys, I brought it out one day. All right, every time we score a goal, whoever scores it, you rip a panel off. And it was required that you do it after the game. But then I got to a point where I got this Dan Hatch. I can remember his name. I hope he doesn't mind me mentioning his name. He started scoring goals, and he would just run over the ball, and they'd give him the ball, and he'd be ripping it off, and then he'd go back, and I don't know, Marcus. Somehow it worked. Somehow it worked, and it became a bit of legend. Ripping the panels off, and they go, Coach, what happens if we rip all the panels off? I'll just get another ball. Yeah. I'll just get another ball. We'll rip more panels off. So, but regarding winning season, losing season, my MO, which I really enjoyed in terms of coaching when I first got started as a high school coach, was to take teams that had little history of success and turning them around. My high school, when I started coaching in high school, never had a winning season. Within 2 years, I had them in a state tournament, never lost the remaining years. My first college gig at Mass Maritime Academy, at the time, we were in the toughest Division III conference in the country, the MASCAC. Turned that program around. We were playing some of the best teams in the country. From there, I go to Eastern Nazarene College, a real tough place. Yeah. Really little or no recent history of success. Turned that program around into a winning season. We won a conference championship. I spent 2 years at MIT as the goalkeeper coach. And my longest stint was at LaSalle College, where I was hired to start the men's program. There was no men's program. There were no men on campus when I was hired, because it was an all-women's college. So I arrive on campus. There's no field, no uniform, no schedule. There were no men on campus, all women. And I was there for, 16 seasons. We had 14 winning seasons, 13 years in a row where we didn't lose. So I had a great run. As far as, coaching winning teams and losing teams, yeah, things change. What doesn't change are your cultural expectations. I always build cultures, right? And that's a far-reaching thing to do. It's a far-reaching concept, building cultures, because that's on the field and off the field. And I found that if you build a good culture, and obviously as a college coach, you got to recruit well. That always helps. You can turn things around quickly, relatively quickly. And then once you start winning, and then people really like the culture, it's easier to attract players. They like the culture. They like what the seniors are saying. They like what the alumni are saying. They like how we conduct ourselves. They like the way we do things. And then the word kind of gets out, and it helps change cultures. It helps turn programs that had no history of winning to those who win. And we won at a high level. When I was at LaSalle, we won at a high level, regional, national claim, NCAAs, ECACs, conference championships, All-Americans. We ran the gamut. And do things change? Sure. Yeah. Every year it changes. Even, we had that run of 13 straight years of not having a losing season. Every year was different. I'm a big believer in Bill Belichick. Once the season's over, you win a Super Bowl. That was yesterday. Now we have to look forward to next year. Even though you have a good team coming back, there's always changes. There's always something different, something you can improve on, something that needs to be built on, and something you've kind of put on the back burner, and now I want to bring it to the front burner and work on it. You're ever present. You're ever present as to what needs to be done year in and year out, even if you're winning every year. Because if you don't, man, you get stale and it gets boring.
Yeah, yeah.
And you never wanted to be stale or boring.
And this is where your reflection comes in, and play, evaluations of how
Sure.
you did and yeah, really interesting. And so in a culture, Gio, like work ethic, attitude, like what's your top two or three things in your culture that you need that are kind of non-negotiable?
Character.
Yeah.
Character. Didn't
Give
you have
me
to
an
think
idea.
about
Tell me
character?
about character though. Like,
Listen, you want kids, who are good, honest, hardworking kids, who are will give you everything they got. You know, the character.
yeah, they'll pick up the phone, be
These kids,
responsible.
when you're down 1-0 with 5 minutes left to go in the game,
Yep.
these character kids will step up.
Mhm.
They won't crumble. They'll fight for each other.
Yeah.
Character always is first and foremost.
You know what? It's funny because I don't. I know kind of the area, in Mass and stuff, and there's just certain things like when we go down to play Massasoit, for example, they don't give up ever. It doesn't matter if it's 5-0. It could be 2 seconds left in the game, and the tackles are coming in hard. Do you think there's something about where you're from, the community? Does this all breed into it?
Absolutely. So you mentioned Massasoit. And for those who aren't familiar with the area here, Massasoit Community College is in Brockton, Mass. And typically, they've got a lot of ethnic kids, a lot of Cape Verdeans, a lot of Portuguese kids.
Mm-hmm.
And as we all know, soccer is in their DNA. Soccer's in their DNA. And they play in the streets growing up. And when you play in the streets, you find that edge, when you play in the streets. Oftentimes these kids are playing, to get an education so they can help their family.
Yeah, very blue collar.
Oh yeah, they're very blue collar, and they know that this degree means everything. And if I'm not on the soccer field, and I might lose a scholarship, or I might lose financial aid, I might not stay in school. That gives them a character edge, and I use that word, advisedly. I'm not talking about being dirty or anything like that.
No.
Just having a good competitive edge. They're going to get stuck in. They're going to get stuck in well, stuck in appropriately. They're going to shoulder you off the ball. They're not soft players.
No.
And that, and I'm going to touch a third rail here. Our typical white suburban kids don't have that edge. Do not have that edge.
One of the other things, Gio, I noticed about some of, like, I've coached a lot of, the Cape Verdeans and Portuguese. Family is very tight and very important to them, and passion and emotion is a driving force as well. And I think that's an interesting thing. I think that relates to the passion on the field that we talk about as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, again, you grow up in an ethnic community. It's soccer and everything else. I mean, having grown up in an Italian family, it's soccer and everything else.
Yeah, so, Italians feel passionate, right?
Sure, of course, of course. Everything stops on Saturday and Sunday to watch Serie A.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Those elements, I guess those life elements are what contributes to those kids playing with such a competitive edge. And that, that's helpful on the field. That is helpful on the field. So.
Yeah, no, for sure. Gio, if you're a, I know that you help, that you're the director of coaching, correct? In Rhode Island?
For the Super Liga in Rhode Island. Yes, sir. Yep.
Yeah. So taking it away from college coaching now, when you have volunteer coaches as well in there?
Yeah, it's your typical youth soccer environments where the predominance of people involved are parents, they're volunteer coaches. This is not a club, where there are paid coaches. This is a true youth soccer organization. To give folks some context, the Superliga encompasses 38 communities or club. We'll call it clubs, but 38 communities, 540 coaches, and over 10,000 players, and they're all typical youth soccer environment, town soccer environment.
So how are you conveying a way to affect that environment for your coaches to be like, give me like 3 things that are important for those coaches to go to the field with from Gio as the director of coaching, like try to do these 3 things in your session, like to simplify it, like kind of what are your 3 messages to basically novice coaches and parents? What are those messages?
Well, I'll start first and foremost. I got hired 3 years ago, and in the last 3 years, we've been dealing with this thing called COVID. So it's been difficult. So everything I've been done is virtual.
Okay.
It's been virtual. But no, that never diminished the message that you talked about. First and foremost, get educated. Get educated. Formally through either U.S. Soccer or United Soccer Coaches, get educated. All the research out there, all the data is out there relative to educated coaches. They're far more effective. Teams, kids that have licensed coaches, certified coaches, have a tendency to stay because the coach does a better job. So get educated. Number two, right, is make sure you have fun. I call it infusion of joy. Infuse joy into your sessions. Have fun with it. As I always say, you want kids to come with a smile and leave with a smile. And then last but not least, remain open-minded. You don't know everything.
Yeah.
I don't know everything. You don't know everything.
Right.
Remain open-minded to learn new things, because when you learn new things, you become more empowered. And when you become more empowered, you create better sessions. You create better sessions. You do a better job by the kids. You do a better job by the kids. They stay in the sport. I'll share with you in the audience a rather startling statistic, and that is upwards to 70% of kids involved in youth sports in this country quit by the time they hit high school, many of them before middle school. The number one reason, it's not fun. And again, the research is out there that if coaches are educated, their efficacy is obviously improved. Kids are retained. So those are the three things. Get educated, have fun, and have an open mind.
Okay. I like that. Makes sense. So, Gio, I think two things. I just want to know two more, and we'll wrap it up in just a few minutes. But as far as you, I know that Tony and Chico was a big goalkeeper mentor of you. Did you have any other coaching mentors, whether it be from soccer or other sports? And then a follow-up with that is, where are you going next this year? Like, what is Gio up to with GP Soccer podcast, and we'll take it from there.
Boy, I was real lucky, Marcus, to have some influential people in my life in terms of the sport of soccer. I mentioned one already, Wayne Masters, who was my high school coach at Weymouth South High School. I picture him right now. We talk about infusing joy. He had to infuse a lot of joy because, as I said, there was only two of us who could play soccer, and the rest of them weren't very good. And we lost a lot of games. So Wayne was very much a mentor to me. I had an athletic director, God rest his soul, Bill Dempsey, a hockey guy, and he was the one that pushed me into becoming a collegiate coach. I was very successful at the high school level. I had turned the program around at Weymouth North High School, and I'll never forget. He pulled me aside one day. He goes, "Giovanni, it's time for you to move on." I'm like, "Are you firing me?" And he kind of elaborated. He goes, "No, there's a college coaching job, Mass Maritime Academy. I think we can help you get that gig, and you need to move up." He saw something in me, and he was a great mentor, someone who I could. One of those guys, Marcus, where you didn't have to talk to him, just watch how he carried himself.
Yeah,
you watch how he carried himself. He was a good guy. And he had standards, and he created a culture, and you wanted to do a good job for Bill. You just want to do a good job for him. Now, goodness knows if you didn't do a good job, you heard from Bill Dempsey.
Yeah.
You heard from him. I heard from him only once in my career as a high school coach. But you wanted to do well by Bill. So he was a great mentor. Professionally, particularly on the coaching education side, Doug Williamson, who is heavily involved with United Soccer Coaches, was a great mentor of mine. Jeff Vanell. Peter Gooding, legend, as you know. Legend.
I love
these three guys in particular early on in my coaching education life were great mentors, particularly when I got on I'll call it the political side, where I was chairman of committees, right? Part of, larger committees with a lot of heavyweights in the game nationally. They really helped me navigate the political side or the administrative side or the organizational side of the then NSCAA, now United Soccer Coaches. And I leaned on them heavily. I would call them up and, or email. And then, most recently, 3 years ago, I turned 60. turn 60. For some people, they're like, okay, I'm done. I'm 60.
You're just starting, Gio.
I'm just starting. So I reached out to I based my two bosses at United Soccer Coach, Ian Barker and Vince Gansberg, and I emailed them. I said, I just turned 60, and I don't want to be that guy that because you're older, you can't teach, the old dog new tricks. I don't want to be that guy.
Right.
So I have always had mentors. Can I reach out to you? And they're two wonderful guys, and they're wonderful. And they go, of course. And I've leaned on them, and I've had questions, or what do you think? Or they've been really, really good. I think it's important to have mentors, no matter what stage you are in your life. So I've been real lucky to have some good mentors. Academically, I looked up some people who I work with from on an academic standpoint. And I feel very lucky that I was always kind of smart enough to know that, dude, you don't know everything.
Yeah.
But there's some people out there like, that person's pretty good. Well, that person's pretty good. Watch them, talk to them. Yeah. Right. Because then you learn from them. So
that's a reoccurring theme with every top level coach, Gio.
Sure.
You're always looking to learn. I've read whatever, studies on it about Guardiola, and Guardiola's never talking about himself. He's asking you everything that you know. And it's really, really important, because the top guys are always nervous. They're not going to have the latest information, and they're going to be last to the party. And that's a driving force with them as well. And I just think it's so interesting that people are like that.
With United Soccer Coaches in recent years, we've established a new program called 30 Under 30. Mm-hmm. And it's a program that you have to apply for. Obviously, you have to be under 30 years of age. And I became a mentor right off the bat. Again, going back to the earlier part of our conversation, a combination of experience and wisdom and the open-mindedness. I wanted to serve as a mentor. I had a young man, Thomas Coombs, last year, who's down in Florida. And my newest mentee, Eric Marquis, who's with Atlanta United and MLS. He's a performance analyst. Awesome. That has been really good for me as well. Yeah, I'm their mentor because of my resume, my experience, but I'm learning from them, particularly with Eric, who's a performance analyst. I'm going to go down to Atlanta, in the summer when COVID kind of dies down a little bit, and I'm going to watch him work. I'm going to learn from him. He's going to pick my brain in terms of the stuff that he's doing, and I'm looking forward to it. Not just as a mentor, but this is going to be cool. I'm going to be learning some cool new stuff. And then as far as what's on Giovanni Pacini's plate, listen, as I look out my window here, there's not enough snow to be skiing. As you know, I'm a ski junkie.
I know.
I need some snow, dude. But all kidding aside, I'm not a head coach anymore in college. Been there, done that, enjoyed it. But my plate remains full. My work with the United Soccer Coaches as a coach educator. Once we get past COVID, that'll be more active again. My work with the Super Liga, even though it's virtual, still keeps me busy with the work I have to do with them. My podcast, GP Soccer Podcast, took off faster than even I thought. And it's been a lot of fun. Again, it kind of, as you know, as I told you and the audience earlier, my original career intent was radio and TV broadcasting. So I kind of get that fix. As a young Giovanni who wanted to do that radio thing. Well, I am a radio guy now. And when I finish with you, I go downstairs to my studio and I start working on season 6.
That's awesome.
I'm still a goalkeeper coach at the collegiate level. The environment will change a little bit this fall, where I'll be bouncing between maybe 2 or 3 different schools, serving as the goalkeeper coach. The consulting part is ongoing, whether it's your youth soccer organization or, your DOCE. You want someone to come in with with an objective eye and to take a look at what you're doing and help you, either develop a curriculum or help with player development or coach development or something administrative. So the GP Soccer consulting part under my GP Soccer brand. So, my plate, Marcus, has got a lot of different helpings on it. A lot of different helpings.
It is awesome. And you're going to expect another call from me to come in as a consultant to the college program, because, people don't realize there's not a lot of Giovannis out there, and to be able to have a guy like you come in and give your input is literally invaluable. So, I hope that people listening will kind of understand that, and you could never hire anybody, better than Gio to come in and really lend that eye and that wisdom that we talked about. It's just massive. So, Gio, it sounds exciting, and it sounds like you are just getting started, which is awesome. And
Absolutely.
yeah, I just want to thank you so much for being on and sharing with the listeners, and I'm sure you'll be on again. And this is actually, we are concluding the first season of Top Soccer Coach, and I will be on again, and we're going to do season number 2. I'll probably wait about a month or 2 months before we start with season number 2.
Fantastic, as always, Marcus, and I mean this. You're one of my dearest friends. You are a wonderful colleague. It's always a great joy to connect with you, to chat with you. To the audience out there, we're doing this formally, we're being videotaped, but this kind of conversation, even when the videotape isn't going on or not being, audio taped, this is Marcus and I. We always chat and we're talking soccer, and I'm honored to call you my friend, Marcus. I am honored to call you my friend.
Vice versa, G. I really appreciate it, and again, Happy New Year, and more to come.
And listen, do a snow dance for me.
Yeah,
I need some snow, dude. Give me some snow so I can ski.
I will.